one has a ding here. I don't know if you can see that, probably not on camera, but it has a small ding here. But certain impact can damage the motherboard on the laptop, and a lot of times people beat up MacBooks. They are like Toyota Camrys in that people will beat them up and try to sell them for $1 billion. So I would say pay close attention to the description, ask if there's cracks, dents, and dings. And if you see something heavy, I probably wouldn't buy it because it could damage the internals or the screen. I saw a guy, he was selling one where the coating was coming off, the reflective coating was coming off of the front of the screen. I don't know how that happens, but 2012 MacBook like last year, that wasn't even an issue with that MacBook. So they hold up pretty well. So if they're beat up, it's usually something, it's not wear, it's usually something that the user had, and it can ruin things. If things are spilled on the computer, the speakers can be rough. So just be aware. They want $1 billion because of the quality of the product, but if you abuse it, it's just not gonna work as well and your experience won't be as good. Like broken keys are a thing to watch out for. Again, coatings coming off the screen, speakers being bad. When you get a Mac, and you're checking it out, definitely look all around. But when you are going to buy a Mac, you can come up to this corner and click on the Apple logo and click about this Mac, and it will tell you what year the Mac is from and some of the specs. And I would also recommend going in and seeing the size of the hard drive. That'll tell you the RAM, the model. But sometimes people are slick and these really aren't modifiable that much, but people will modify them. And so you want to take a look at their RAM and also the size of the hard drive, because people can misrepresent that and replace the hard drives. Even though they may give you the model number or the serial and you can see what it came with, that doesn't mean that's what it has. All right, folks, thank you for watching. And I want to keep this video simple, but I want to give you some additional information past what I said in the previous segment. So ideally, you would familiarize yourself with Macs before you buy one, but I would 100% check the description and make sure the About This Mac page matches what they put in the description. So sometimes people will post the 5-digit alphanumeric number for the Mac. A lot of Apple products have that. It'll be like A1213. So you want to look that up, look up the specs, and usually it'll pull up on the Apple website if you do a Google search, and then you can look at the screenshots they posted and make sure it matches up, because sometimes people can misrepresent things and Macs really aren't modifiable. So if you bought one and it had 8 gigs of RAM versus 16, like it's soldered onto the motherboard. You can't change it out. So you want to make sure you're actually getting what you expect and what you're paying for. And guys, honestly, when you're buying a Mac, you don't get like a ton of bang for your buck on a used Macintosh or Apple MacBook. You're just buying into the ecosystem, really. I mean, one of the biggest reasons I have my MacBook is so I can airdrop to the 2 iPhones that I have. Like, that's one of the biggest things. It's not that it's like that much better when I'm surfing the web or watching Netflix or something like that. So anyway, let's get back into the video. That if you are not a Mac user or not super familiar with Macs, definitely talk to somebody about their Mac experience and touch and get a hold of their Mac, just so that you can have an understanding of what you're getting into. Like, they're great computers, but I will say this, there's some nuanced things. And one of the most important ones that I've found is that they only support computers for up to 7 years. And that's okay. I mean, some of the Macs that have come out in the last couple of years still have 8 gigs of RAM. And I had a 2012 MacBook Air that had 8 gigs of RAM. So it's kind of weird how Apple does that, and they could actually support their computers for longer, but I get it. They're a business. Why pour money into making updates for 8, 9-year-old machines? 7 years is plenty enough. But I will say this, if you've never had a Mac before, you need to understand the software OSs are limited to where if you get an older Mac and you try to upgrade programs, it'll say you need to have Mac OS. Now I think it's like 14 or higher to get the latest iMovie and other programs. And so if you've had a Mac in the past and you've had those programs on that Mac under your Apple ID, it will allow you to download the latest compatible version with your computer, which is super huge. So if you had several Macs, like their system automatically does that. For some reason, in the Macs I had in the past, I don't know if I wasn't logged in, it wasn't registering anything when I had my 2016. So I couldn't download iMovie, and I couldn't download several other GarageBand, several other applications that are like essential when you have a Mac to me. And that was kind of frustrating. And I was trying to find places to download and sideload them, and I was having a ton of trouble. Like, I couldn't find them. I'd have to go into the deep dark web or hire somebody. And that's just extra money that you don't want to pay. It kind of ties into my other point, going back to checking the condition. When somebody resets a MacBook, it deletes some of the more basic programs that I feel like it should include off of the Mac. Like iMovie and GarageBand, I think those should be installed by default. But when you reinstall a lot of the OSs for MacBooks, they completely delete that. And then you're stuck not having that. You want to get one if you've never had a Mac that's 7 years or newer, or you're just going to have a nice looking computer with very limited capabilities because the programs are limited. Fun fact, Macs do not have a Netflix app. You have to watch that through the browser, so it doesn't matter what age your MacBook is. One last thing is that when you get a MacBook, you want to check and make sure that the battery life is decent. All right, folks, and let's just go over how to check the cycles on a battery. So if you go here and you go to System Settings, you go scroll down, System Report. And so when you go to System Report, you go to Power, and then you charge 93%, full charge capacity 7166, and then cycle information. So it'll see where it says 307 cycles, and then it says normal, condition normal. And so we're good. All right, so this laptop came with about 8,790 milliamp hours. And so this is about 81%. And like, honestly, the 2016 I had, the guy didn't really use it at all, and the battery was really good, but batteries still age, so they're gonna experience power reductions just on age too. And as long as it lasts 2.5 hours, I'm good on this one. If I was that hard up, I would get the battery replaced for like $180. Even though it's a large percentage of what I pay for this laptop, it's still worth it to have. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video with some final thoughts. And there's so much that I could say about MacBooks and just the intricacies of using them and owning them. And I'll just boil it down to 3 points. Number one, they're expensive. Either way you look at it, it costs $250 to replace the battery on the one that I'm showing you. And is it worth it to go from 3 to 5+ hours? And then in a year, they're going to stop support, which I'll still be able to use it, but then there's that kind of anxiety to where if they do a major OS update, that may be the cutoff for some, very critical updates. So that's something you have to weigh. And I also think there's a lot of overlap between PCs and MacBooks. And in particular, if you're not a power user or somebody who does work professionally or aspires to do that, it may not be worth it to you. Like, I think there's a larger jump from having like an iPhone and an Apple Watch to going to a MacBook, especially a MacBook Pro. Whereas buying an iPad is like buying any other tablet. It's pretty seamless, but that's for you to decide. And the final thing that I will say is that on the Pros, especially this one, the batteries are very hard to replace if you try to do it yourself. They sit under some major components. You have to dissolve some glues. If you've ever changed the battery in a PC, especially a Dell laptop, you just take the screws for the bottom plate off, you disconnect 1 or 2 power connectors, and then about 4 to 6 screws, and you can take the battery out and replace it easily. There's so much more to do on the Mac, and I feel like they did that intentionally to prevent that, so you'll have to go to them, and it's kind of annoying. So definitely watch a tutorial video if that's kind of an aspiration. I'll get this one with a dead battery and replace it myself. It's not as easy as you think, and it may not be worth it to you. But with that being said, thank you for watching. I will catch you in the next video. Bye. Oh, wait, I forgot the third point. So the third point is that PCs are 100% you getting more bang for your buck. So if you're looking into an older laptop, again, I kind of hinted at this before, look at getting a PC unless you really just want to be all in on Mac. Again, you can edit on PCs, you can build those out, and you can get much more bang for your buck. I just bought a $100 Dell laptop. It was a 14-inch, 5491. Now the screen is not super nice, but I can replace that probably for 50 bucks. But the battery still works very well. It's in good condition, and it's a very speedy laptop. So it has a quad-core processor, 16 gigs of RAM. It doesn't have a video card, but again, I'm not Walt Disney. I edit on phones primarily, and it's just something that I can use and carry about, relatively lightweight. And it's just a good example of better bang for your buck. And then also I have a very large external hard drive that I was using with the PC. It's kind of hard to manage it. I can read off of it with my MacBook, but I can't edit, delete stuff, and kind of rearrange stuff or rename stuff like I want. So I always like to keep a cheap PC in my back pocket. But with that being said, I will say my final goodbyes, and I'll catch you in the next video. All right, and the last thing I'll say is, like, what do I recommend this computer for? So like I said, this is my main computer. You can use this to watch movies, watch Netflix, watch YouTube, surf the web, shop, do light video editing, photo editing. Like, I think it could handle large jobs, but it just might take a while.